Welcome to Lawyers in the House with Motley. Wish you had a lawyer in the family? Now you do. Here's your host, Veronica Waters.
Hello. Welcome to Lawyers in the House with Motley on WSB. I'm Veronica Waters here with you for another fabulous episode. So glad to have you joining me again. It feels so good to know that you're out there with me. A 300-foot-tall sequoia grows from a seed the size of an oat flake. A microscopic virus can topple a mighty elephant. A gorgeous diamond worth several months' salary can be set into just 5 millimeters of metal and light enough to carry on a single finger. Big things come in small packages. Can we agree?
Oh, yeah. Of course.
Such as in life, as in law. Back to unwrap that in just a moment. But first, let's give a big package of welcome applause to these Motley injury attorneys in the house with me today. We're going to start off with Craig LaChance. Thank you so much, Craig, for being back with me today.
Glad to be here.
He is a repeat guest, as you may remember. But if you don't remember Craig's smiling face, let me tell you just a little bit about him. He graduated UGA and went to law school at Georgia State. And he is married.
Yes.
And dad, dog?
2 dogs.
Okay.
2 golden retrievers.
Yeah, two golden retrievers named after snacks.
That's correct.
Am I right?
Yep. Jelly beans and Mr. Pickles.
I love it. Tasty couple of pups there. And Craig has such an interesting story, such an interesting path to Motley because he didn't start off in this field. You were a finance guy out of college, yes?
That's correct.
Okay,
yeah.
Tell me about that. What led you here?
Well, after I graduated my undergrad, I actually went and worked for Progressive Insurance for a couple of years out in Denver. And then personal things brought me back to the Atlanta area, and I worked for Allstate for a few years before going to law school. And then while in law school, I interned with a small personal injury practice, and that kind of led my way to Motley after that.
How did you know that that's what you wanted to do? Like something clearly resonated with you in that time.
Well, I think it was working with the insurance companies and seeing how they mistreated people and how they took advantage of people in situations wanted me to take my law degree and use that to help individuals as opposed to large corporations.
Mm-hmm. So it felt like maybe moving into something that was more of a calling for you,
Sure.
so to speak?
Yep.
Yeah. Now, a little legal birdie told me no one ever complains about you, Craig. That the amount of care and personal attention that you give to clients is unsurpassed. That is pretty much a direct quote. How does that make you feel to hear that? And what is it about you that makes you that attentive?
That makes me feel good. I mean, it's just important to return people's phone calls, answer their questions, and treat them like human beings and individuals, not just another case in your repertoire.
Yeah. And you guys get to really know these clients a lot because you're working with them for such a long time. And
Absolutely.
you make them feel like part of the family is what I keep hearing. Everyone
try
at
to.
Motley says this, right? Like we treat them like family. So let's talk to our brother, Mark Molina over here, New York native, Bronx.
Bronx, yes.
Mark Molina from the Bronx.
Bronx.
From the Bronx. Okay. And Mercy College graduate, Benjamin Cardozo School of Law, Marine veteran, married, father, motorcycle rider, airplane mechanic. I mean, this guy is a one-stop shop for everything. Do you also cook? Are you a Renaissance man?
No.
Okay, not a Renaissance man, but very
Not at all.
close, right?
Right, very close.
And I know that you've been in law for 3 decades now. 3 decades, am I right?
30.
30 years. And you've had quite the pathway before coming into personal injury law.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about those early days.
I got a nice resume.
Yeah.
Legal aid in the Bronx, which is where I started my career after law school, and that is combat. That is outright combat in court every day, the weight of the world on your shoulders, representing folks who are, charged with serious crimes. So did that for 5 years. That gave me an inordinate amount of trial experience in the courthouse. Tried all kind of cases, misdemeanors, felonies, hearings, all type of stuff. That drains you.
Wow,
That
yeah. It's like a
drains you.
trial by fire.
It does.
Because there's so much on the line.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. When you lose, I didn't lose a lot, but when you lose and you got to turn around and see the family, it's something that stays with you. So I left that and went to work, like Craig, for an insurance company. Learned that side of the law, and then went on my own. Worked at IBM, worked for several insurance companies. I worked on my own. So a long, torturous road to where I am
Torturous.
now at Montlick, happily. And I'll end my career here.
How
'Cause
nice.
While you may think I look young, I am not. And hoping to end it well here. Good, as you know, you've met all of our lawyers, and that's our hallmark. We want the clients to know that we treat them like we want our family to be treated.
Yeah, I keep hearing that over and over and over. And when I see actually on and off the air how close some of the attorneys have become with your clients, like the relationships that have endured past the cases, it really is very eye-opening. And if you think about what that actually says about that familial relationship, it's not just a turn of phrase. It's not just lip service.
I got invited to one of my clients, who I love her madly, her 60th, 6-0 wedding anniversary.
Wow.
6-0. She's been married 6-0. She was in the civil rights movement. Her husband is a reverend, and they are just delicious.
What an incredible
60
milestone.
years, yep.
How
And
long
they
have you been
invited-
married?
36 long years.
Long, wonderful years.
Yeah,
you meant to
wonderful.
say.
Yeah, I
And
could use
Craig,
that
how
word.
long have you been married?
7 years.
Okay.
I had to think for a second. I'm sorry.
Now, were you?
I
You
knew that
were married
question was
when
coming.
you came to Montlick. Were you married when you came to Montlick, or have you?
I was not.
Okay. Wow, this is great. I love it. So many family ties.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing so much of your personal stories with us. I always like for listeners to know to whom they're speaking, because it's not just a name in the phone book. There are people behind these lawyers' titles or whatever. And now we're talking to two dynamic Montlick injury attorneys here on Lawyers in the House with Montlick on WSB. Thank you, Mark and Craig, for being in the house.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Today's show is a take on the phrase big things come in small packages. And by that, what I mean is sometimes really big injuries can come from little things that don't cause a lot of property damage. You can see high damage claims even if there are very low property damage ones, right?
Absolutely. Well, in general, the starting concept for this is really what we call the eggshell plaintiff rule. And it's a concept that I think's been, a lot of people may have heard in passing, but essentially what it means is the defendant, the driver that causes the accident, takes the plaintiff, our client, as they find them. In other words, they can't argue that if our client was otherwise a healthy 18-year-old football player, our client would have not been hurt. They have to take the client as they find them, meaning that if this client has a history of prior conditions that make them more susceptible to injury, then the defendant has to take that client as they are and appreciate the fact that a minor impact could cause a serious injury in a person such as that.
It doesn't mean, though, that a healthy 18-year-old football player couldn't also be injured in a small
Correct. Doesn't
impact,
mean
right?
that at all.
Yeah.
Soft tissue injuries. I mean, a lot of people, there's this conception that, or misconception, I should say, that you've got to have a broken bone or a torn ligament or visible cut, scrapes, and bruises to present an injury claim, and that just isn't the case. People suffer soft tissue injuries all the time, and they're able to be compensated for those injuries.
It was like you said to me before the show, the heart is a muscle, right?
Yeah.
That's a lot of soft tissue right there. Nobody wants to damage that. Mark, tell me about your history with these kinds of cases. And were you surprised when you started seeing that, and maybe you knew this early on, because it could be surprising to those of us on the outside. Were you surprised to find how badly somebody could be hurt when it looks like barely this car just got a bump?
I was surprised when I got into this field seeing that, but the concept, I do it backwards, right? I always tell people, can you accept the concept if I show you a car that's mangled, totaled, and tell you that person was hurt? Everybody's, yeah, sure. I say, take the same picture, and I tell you, this car mangled, totaled, and this person walked away without a scratch. They're like, oh, it can happen. Everybody accepts that. But then when you ask them, look at this picture, and there's a little dimple on the bumper, and I say that this person suffered a neck injury because of their pre-existing type of conditions, or very hard to accept.
Nobody can quite believe it. They can't quite put those things together.
They look at the dimple, and it's not possible. And it's a hard. And insurance companies mobilize for war on these cases. They get the property damage pictures, the little dimple, and they have teams specially designed to attack these cases. Some call them minor impact soft tissue, MIST, other acronyms, but they mobilize, and sadly, they give a lot of these cases to younger, less experienced professionals, and they see the dimple and they just can't fathom that someone could have gotten hurt.
They haven't had the dots connected for themselves.
That's
okay, so
correct.
how do you define like a low property damage, though, from person to person, case to case? What's that look like?
It really depends, because you could talk about low property damage as in visible appearance, as Marcus pointed out. You can talk about low property damage in the cost to repair the vehicle. So there's multiple ways of looking at it, and we can always choose the angle that's most favorable to our client to argue to the insurance company that this isn't as minor as maybe you're making it out to be.
And cars are so expensive these days. Even a tiny, like when that lady backed into me a few months ago into my car, there was a cracked grill. But when they opened up the car, it's like all this other stuff is so expensive just to replace it. So don't just give me a check for $200. Not that the insurance company, her insurance company did do right by us, but it was, if you looked at the car, you might think, well, this is so minor.
Right.
But it can be so much more expensive. Same with an injury. You might look at the person who walked away and think, well, they're fine. But these things can be hidden. They can be internal. And it's also, as I was hearing, it's how your head hits the windshield or the window, or how the force is applied,
Correct.
which actually can make all the difference in how badly you're hurt.
Absolutely. Yeah. The positioning of your body at the time of the impact, whether or not you were expecting the impact. I mean, there's lots of classic cases where someone's maybe turned at a stoplight, maybe turned talking to their child in the back seat, and the car comes up from behind. They didn't see it, and their neck's turned when they're hit. And the forces are different than if someone was, sitting straight forward, anticipated the impact, gripping the steering wheel. So it really depends how your client's positioned in the vehicle, and I think also importantly, whether or not they anticipated the impact.
Yeah. I want to get into some stories from you guys to talk about how we can illustrate these things. Let's connect some dots for the audience. Craig, if you can give me a tease, just 10 seconds of a case that sticks with you.
Sure. I had a case where a client was sitting in the drive-thru of a Burger King, and someone backed out from a parking space and hit his vehicle. Classic scenario, maybe a dent the size of a grapefruit, and he ended up having neck surgery 2 weeks later.
And how did that case with Craig LaChance turn out? We're going to find out. We're also going to hear from Montlick injury attorney Mark Molina here on Lawyers in the House with Montlick on WSB. All the different ways to look at property damage. Stay with us. Back with us on Lawyers in the House with Montlick on WSB. Yes, you are here with me, Veronica Waters, and Montlick injury attorneys Mark Molina and Craig LaChance. We're talking about low property damage, high injury damage, and Craig had given us a tease to a case he had launched from somebody's injury at Burger King.
Sure. As I was saying, my client was sitting in the drive-thru in his large pickup truck, and a small car backed into him as he was sitting there. Left about a grapefruit-sized dent in the side panel of his pickup bed. And what was interesting is he was on the operating table within, I think, 10 days or 2 weeks of the date of the injury. And this is because he had a pre-existing condition. He had a prior neck surgery that was done, I think, about 2 years prior to the date of the accident that we represented him for. But he recovered from that, and he had a period of at least a year where he hadn't seen a doctor, wasn't getting any treatment, had fully recovered.
Completely good to go.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then he has this accident and immediately feels pain in his neck, goes to the emergency room that day, goes to see his former surgeon who treated him from the prior injury. And the surgeon's response was, your hardware shifted. We need to operate on you right away to make sure that you don't end up paralyzed. So they did that, and we submitted the claim, and were able to get all the available insurance money from both the at-fault driver and some additional funds from his uninsured motorist carrier. So it was a great result for the client.
In contrast, I'll use an example of a young kid I represented, high school kid, tall basketball player, no prior issues at all. He was so tall and his legs were so long that he was hit in the rear, and his knee hit the bottom part of the dashboard.
Oh, my God.
And even though it was just a little dimple on the back of his Jeep, he needed surgery.
Wow.
And these cases are difficult. They fight us on these because they see the dimple and they just say, not possible.
Even they have it at the insurance companies. They even have not quite connected the dots sometimes to understand that you can have little property damage, big injury damage. And it's so interesting. You don't have to have the pre-existing condition. You don't have to have a previous injury to be hurt, even when the accident seems, quote unquote, small.
Right.
Somebody who's, as you were saying earlier, completely healthy, young, never a medical problem ever, nothing undiagnosed even. And you can find yourself at the really bad end of a personal injury case.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Coming up on Lawyers in the House, I want to actually talk a little bit about how you get around that and why these cases are so tough. Because if you're just eyeballing that dimple or that grapefruit of damage on the car, what are the steps to convince the insurance company that, hey, listen to what these doctors have to say? This client is really hurt. Coming up next on Lawyers in the House on WSB. Welcome back to Lawyers in the House with Motlink on WSB. I'm Veronica Waters here with Motlink injury attorneys Mark Molina and Craig LaChance. We're talking about big injuries from little property damage. Yes, it can happen. And if you don't quite understand why, then you know what? Check out the first half of the episode. If you missed it, you can find us on all platforms, social at Motlink Law. And you know what? Subscribe to us on your favorite podcast platform and let every new episode hit your inbox as soon as it drops. We would love to hear from you, too, on lawyersinthehouse.com. You can send us a line 24/7 with your questions for the show. I've got questions for Craig LaChance and Mark Molina talking about how hard it is. You got to tell me, how hard is it to convince insurance companies, I guess, in particular, because the doctors agree somebody can be hurt from a tiny accident that doesn't look like it caused any damage. How do you prove it to the insurance companies?
Well, I think the key is to get medical attention as soon as possible and contact us as soon as possible, because there are certain things that we want to set in place early on in a claim that if you allow a couple weeks to go by, that could really hurt your claim. I mean, especially on low property damage claims, it's very important to see a doctor or go to the emergency room as soon as possible, because if you've got low property damage and you wait 2-3 weeks to go get treatment, you're really going to hurt yourself in those scenarios. So immediate medical care or medical care as soon as possible is very key.
And you got to listen to yourself, too. Listen to your body. You might think it's going to pass after a day or two. But you need to pay attention, because maybe, I don't even know if it's possible, but maybe you have a client who looks at his or her own car and says, well, it doesn't look like, maybe I shouldn't be feeling like this. Maybe this is all in my head. I don't know.
Absolutely.
Get checked out. No matter how minor, get checked out. The medical professionals are the ones that can tell you, and they can see and feel if you have a spasm or something like that on your neck. They put their hands on you, and what you may think is not a big deal is a big deal, but you got to get checked out right away.
Make the time to go to the body shop, too. Make the time to to file the claim, to get it looked at. I couldn't believe how big the repair bill was for just that lady backing into my car.
And you make a good point. I mean, a lot of times people will say, oh, it's minor, no need to call the police. Let's just exchange information, drive off, and then when you call the other driver's insurance company, all of a sudden the story changes, and now they're disputing liability for the accident. So I think there's definitely a trend where people are like, oh, it's minor, especially since the pandemic. The police are taking longer and longer to come out to the accident scenes, and people don't want to wait. But if you want to protect yourself, I strongly recommend you call the police, you wait for the police to arrive, and you get a report.
Right.
So now we know it's a myth. If you think no damage, no injury. We know that now to be a myth. Yes?
Correct.
All right. How do you debunk it?
These are incredibly difficult cases. They are incredibly difficult because, as I said before, insurance companies are mobilized on defending these cases. So you need to get legal representation. You got to get us involved right away.
From the start. From
the start. That's the first thing. And then once we get involved, then we start meticulously laying out to even the lesser experienced claims professionals, this is why it's not a case where there's no injury. This is what happened. This is the damage. They took the bumper cover off, and this is what they found in the undercarriage. He she went to the emergency room, got checked out. If you notice in the ER, there's objective findings that the person had spasms in the neck. You can't make up a spasm. You can't. You can't. A human body can't just spasm their neck spontaneously. That is an objective finding, and if we have that in the emergency room report, and treated and released, that's a good finding for us to pursue the case and convince the claims professional that there's something here.
All right, let's talk about some real life examples, guys.
Well, to give you another example, I had a repeat client, a client that I'd worked with previously, and she actually called me up and was like, Craig, I'm not sure what to do. I was rear-ended. There's really not any damage to the back of my car, but my back's hurting. My back's hurting again. And this isn't like the other story I told you where she ended up having surgery. No, she went to an orthopedic doctor, did some physical therapy, was prescribed medications, and got better over the course of a couple months. But she was thinking about not pursuing the claim because of the lack of damage to her car. And she ended up calling me up, and we got her over to a doctor she saw previously that she'd worked with before, and we ended up getting her the policy limits on the case. So even clients that we've worked with previously are still kind of sheepish when they call us about a claim when there isn't a lot of property damage, and there's no reason to feel that way. Call us, let us look into it. Let us get involved early on in the process. Don't give a recorded statement to the insurance company where they start badgering you about, well, where are you hurt and this and that. Call us first.
And why not the recorded statement?
Never give a recorded statement to an insurance company because, the classic example is, you call the insurance company the day after the accident. They get a recorded statement from you. And at that point in time, maybe your back's not really bothering you. And you say, oh, no, it's fine. I'm okay. And you wake up the next day and your back's killing you. And they're going to say, you just told us your back's not hurt. And now you're trying to claim a back injury.
Wow.
So you don't want to pigeonhole or paint yourself into a corner that early on. And just people in general always feel obligated to answer the questions that are asked of them in these sort of scenarios. And the insurance adjusters are well trained, and they know the questions to ask to basically make it more difficult for that person to present a claim later down the road.
How you feeling, Craig?
Right.
You're like, I'm fine, thanks.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, well,
Right.
you said it on the record. You're
Exactly.
fine. Mark, you see this all the time.
All the time, and these recorded statements, they come back to haunt us. It's like if in any relationship I've ever been in, when I open my mouth and say something I regret, and they remember it, they play it right back to me.
Mine like a steel trap right
Exactly. You said X, Y, Z, and insurance companies said your client said X, Y, Z, and then they hit play.
Yeah.
So yeah, it happens all the time, and again, incredibly difficult cases. You have to get treatment early. You have to get to us early so that we can get involved early. That's the key.
Well, Mark, you said you don't lose often, so give me an example of one that that you took to the wire.
Tried a case in the Bronx against a big carrier, minor impact. Took it all the way to trial. A carrier that Mr. LaChance worked with, and we would have settled for a low amount. And because we went to trial, and in New York you have to pay doctors. It's not, you can't do a video. You got to call doctors live. They ended up paying 3 times what I would have taken before the trial because the jury came back and believed my client.
And they had just been digging in their heels beforehand, the insurance company, and they're like, we're not paying.
They blew up the picture of the dimple, big poster size, and paraded it across the courtroom. And my client did a fantastic job and, convinced the jury that didn't matter. I matter, and this is what happened.
So, side note, so that's interesting. So in Georgia, you can use videotaped depositions of doctors. So they commit their time one time, and then you have their testimony in perpetuity, and you can play the video for
Correct.
the jury. But in New York, you have to have them
Live.
come. So you have to pay them their hourly rate or whatever that they would be making in surgery.
A lot of money.
Oh, my gosh.
And they don't take Mexican pesos. They want U.S. currency. A lot of it.
I hear the peso has made quite the comeback, though.
Yeah, not enough, though. I've tried. They want U.S. currency.
That's incredible. Do you have a lot of these cases? Is the low property damage something that's more frequent than we might think? Because we are used to those big, cars crumpled into ball kind of pictures. I guess the little dimple on the car doesn't make a lot of.
Yeah, it's a significant part of everyone's practice. I mean, that's just the reality of the world we live in. So again, don't be deterred from calling us. Talk to us. We'll let you know whether or not we think we can help you out. And just start. The thing we can come back to, Mark will attest to this, is just start with us. Don't call the insurance company first. Call us first. Let us look into it. Let us get a copy of the police report. Let us see what's going on. don't talk to the insurance company. If you have
Okay.
if you have any concern that you might be hurt, the biggest takeaway is don't talk to the insurance company. Talk to us first before you make any decisions as to how you want
And
to
then,
proceed.
and one of the things I have learned about every Montlake injury attorney I've ever talked to is that if we can't take the case, we'll tell you
We'll
why.
tell you.
Exactly.
We'll tell you why.
We'll
But
tell
I want to make clear that I've also learned that you guys don't run from the tough ones.
No.
Right.
You know, you have taken cases, and victoriously, I might add, where people have actually been turned down by other firms
Yes,
because it
all the
didn't
time.
seem. I don't know why. Maybe they thought it wasn't easy. I don't know. But I know that people have come to you after being turned down by other firms, and you were able to get them amazing results, which means a lot. When you're hurt out there and you feel like you're all alone, you need somebody on your side. Who's going to help you pay the medical bills? How are you going to recuperate with some sort of peace of mind? You mentioned something earlier. What say you to the person who doesn't wait for the police, who depends on the other driver to do the right thing, and then the story changes? How much does the other person's involvement, their conduct, have to do with how the investigation goes in the case?
Sure. I mean, there's a classic scenario, and this is maybe a little different than what you're asking, but we talk about low property damage and how does that impact our ability to recover on behalf of our clients. And sometimes the recovery is based upon the conduct of the defendant driver and not necessarily the severity of the impact or, for that matter, even the severity of our client's injuries.
Really? How so?
Well, the classic example is DUI. If the other driver is cited for DUI, we can seek punitive damages against that individual in addition to the compensatory damages. Compensatory damages are simply your medical expenses, your lost wages, and your pain and suffering.
You're being compensated for that
Correct.
stuff. Okay.
Intended to make you whole again.
Okay.
Whereas punitive damages don't really have anything to do with you as the plaintiff. They have to do with the conduct of the defendant. And DUI, again, is the classic example. And these damages are meant to punish and deter the conduct of that defendant, so hopefully they won't do it again in the future.
That we have talked a little bit about that before, learning a little bit about punitive damages. So obviously it doesn't come up in every case.
Correct.
And so people shouldn't come to you saying, well, my neighbor got hit in a car accident and they got a check for $7 billion or whatever it is, right? It doesn't play like that. You guys keep telling me that 2-word phrase, it depends.
It depends.
Yeah, it depends. But one thing is, again, clear, and it's actually kind of mind-blowing. I feel very fortunate, actually, that I wasn't hurt in that accident. And I was afraid that I was. And I was trying to listen to my body, but I was trying not to panic. Like, is this headache that I feel? Is this tension in my neck? Is this from the accident, or is it because I'm still shaken up? You know, is my adrenaline dumping out after it got so revved up? I mean, I saw this car coming at me, and I just leaned on the horn, and she just came, boom, straight back and, moved back like this. And I'm like, oh my God, what am I, and so I was like on pins and needles thinking, am I going to be okay? But I can see how I looked at the front of my car and I was like, well, she cracked the grill, but maybe this pain I'm feeling really isn't that bad.
But I'm going to use your case and let's add a little twist to it. Let's say she had left the scene and you weren't injured, or you were very injured, very, very in a minor way, and she left the scene. That enhances the value, like Craig said, as a DUI element would enhance the value of your claim, because now we can allege, yes, she wasn't that hurt, but your person left the scene, and the jury's not going to like that. And you can recover an enhanced amount because of the conduct of the other person.
The conduct of the other person can play a direct
Absolutely.
result in how my case ends up. It's incredible. I was fortunate, too, that she didn't deny responsibility once the police got here. Thanks to the folks at Montlake, I knew, and my police, my many police friends, I learned that you stay on the scene, wait for the police to come. And it was actually a recording day. We were supposed to come in here and do the show. And I was good. I waited for the police to come. She admitted her fault to not only the police, but to the insurance company too. But something to think about as these cases play out. And I think as we go and look ahead to the Montlake closing argument straight ahead, it's don't think that just because you can't see it, it's not there, right?
Like that.
The Montlake closing argument is straight ahead. Don't go away. All right, we're talking serious things, but we're having a good laugh here between the breaks on Lawyers in the House with Motley on WSB. Thanks so much for joining us for the Motley closing argument. We are here with Motley injury attorneys Mark Molina and Craig LaChance, who has let me Americanize his name by calling him LaChance for most of this. LaChance. Sound like LaChance. It's Craig LaChance. Don't you love it? You know, he was born in Canada. Right. Does not speak French.
Nope.
Well-known fact. Not little-known fact. Well-known fact. But anyway, it's time for the Motley closing argument. Gentlemen, take it away.
Sure. So the most important thing, and we've harped on this point probably in every episode, is if you're involved in an accident, call the police, stay at the accident scene, insist on a police report. Don't be deterred. Your injuries are real. You need to document what happened.
Yeah.
We handle all size cases, and if you're a follower of this program, you know that we will treat you like we want our own family members to be treated. We're client-centered. We do what needs to be done. I myself have met clients at their homes, at law libraries, at Waffle Houses, in the parking lot during the pandemic, where they'd stand on one end, I'd stand on the other end. So we are client-centered, and that's not just me. That's the whole staff. Yep. From top to bottom.
And lastly, legitimate injuries.
Absolutely. Your injuries are legitimate. We'll fight for you. We'll fight against these defenses that the insurance companies put up that we've discussed throughout the episode. Don't be deterred. We're here to fight for you. Give us a call.
Do you think that there is a lesson here for people who just don't quite get it, who are still going to second guess themselves and say, I can barely see this bump. I can barely see this crack. I'm not calling a lawyer. What do you say to them to make them know it's okay to pick up that phone?
Well, our consultation is free. You don't owe us anything for giving us a call. We work on a contingency fee, which means we're only compensated if we're successful in a recovery for you. So you've got really nothing to lose. Give us a call. And as we've said earlier in the episode, if we can't help you out, we'll tell you why. We'll explain to you why we can't. So again, no harm in giving us a call. It's a quick process. We'll walk you through what your rights are, and then you can make the decision that's best for you.
When they hear, because I'll get the tough guys who call me, I don't feel hurt, but you guys said to call. You, Mark, told me to call you. Go get checked out, and you're not alone. I've done this for over 30 years. Done hundreds of these type of cases where people are legitimately injured. You're not faking it. It comes across.
Yeah. And Mark, you're a tough guy too, right? You
long ago. No more now.
Now you're willing to admit if you got a boo-boo, right? You know,
yeah.
let's get it checked out. Mm-hmm. Let's go to the doctor and let's call the lawyer if need be. All right, think about this, everybody. Cars, trucks, the vehicles that we travel in on an almost daily basis are built to help protect us out there. They're these cages of steel and aluminum. And the way that they help protect us in case of a crash is by absorbing the impact, the energy of that crash. But what happens if that cage of steel and aluminum doesn't absorb that energy? You don't see it, right? There's no damage to the car. Where does that energy go? Quite possibly into your body and the bodies of everybody else in that car. Don't be one of the people who believes that if there's little damage outside, there's not high damage inside. You could be hurting. Trust yourself. Don't judge your accidents book by its cover. There could be a painful story lurking there, and you're going to need a good attorney to help you write a happy ending for it. I'm Veronica Waters on Lawyers in the House with Motley. Thank you so much to lawyers Craig LaChance and Mark Molina for being in the house with me. We will see you next time.